Hi there. Welcome to this Ditch the Job, Create Your Career free workshop. My name is Lacey Larson. I'm really excited to walk you through this content. The goal is essentially to do some quick hacks that can help take you from application all the way to offer letter. I'll do a quick introduction so you know who's giving you this advice. Again, my name is Lacey. I co-founded Ambitiously Intuitive. I've been in tech startups for the last 10 years, and I have helped probably hundreds of people basically take the next step in their career, whether that was helping them write their resume or coaching them before their interview. I myself have gotten pretty much every job that I've ever wanted to manifest. Prior to being in tech startups, I did a variety of jobs, whether it was something as obscure as a bed cleaner at a tanning salon or in the hospitality industry. And I've had a lot of wins. I've been in New York City the last 10 years in a career that I actually love, but I've also made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I'm happy to always share those. And I think the best way that we can learn, pretty cliche, is from our own mistakes. But essentially what I'm saying to you is I specialize in career development, and I've been asked by so many people to put together content so that they can benefit from the tips and tricks that I've learned. If you decide after this free workshop that you've seen value, we actually have a larger course that walks through the entirety of 8 modules, which is the fundamentals, how to build your brand, going through the application for jobs, leveling up on LinkedIn. It's a specialty of mine. Doing mutual qualification in the interview process, because sometimes it feels like you're just trying to sell yourself when in actuality, companies are very much trying to sell you, especially in the Great Resignation. How to handle interviews, the decision-making process, and essentially negotiation best practices when it comes to stepping into your career. Now, that's if you see value in this free workshop where we're going to do a crash course and talk about your professional branding, best practices when updating your resume. I've seen a lot of people make mistakes there. The best places to apply, where you apply can really matter, especially in the quality of jobs that you're looking for. I will touch on how to leverage LinkedIn, and then finally a sneak peek into interview prep. So let's jump in, shall we? So I used to hate it when people say that you need to be concerned about your own brand, but I think we all know in a digital age, how you present yourself, it does matter. So I just want to do a quick side by side in terms of the old school versus the new school process. So in an old school world, yeah, companies still need a resume and they still need cover letters. Statistically speaking, though, I will say people only take on average 6 to 7 seconds to look at a resume. So the aesthetic does matter. But resumes are meant to get an interview, not to get the job. Now, in new school, I would say probably 2/3 of the people that I talk to don't invest in their LinkedIn. So if you're not using it, it's time to get signed up. I am not getting anything from LinkedIn to tell you that. I'm telling you because that's the place that you need to go. It is essentially the digital resume because the statistics don't lie. Job seekers with a comprehensive LinkedIn profile have a 71% higher chance of getting a job interview. So you still need that resume. We will talk here momentarily about what to do when updating that resume. But if you aren't on LinkedIn, it's time to do it. So let's jump into the resume portion and what you should be cognizant of when updating your resume and getting back to the basics. So it can be a pain in the ass to update your resume. If you're going to do it yourself, you do want to make sure that you have multiple resumes if you're applying to multiple different jobs. I'm going to point out some common mistakes. You do have the option to be able to outsource it. I personally have had my resume updated by folks on Fiverr. I know folks who've also had it done on Upwork. I would say you could probably expect between the $50 to $75 range, depending on what all you're looking to pay for. Some people package up doing your cover letter and your LinkedIn profile. And then lastly, I already spoke to this, but you want to make sure that you have multiple versions. So if I'm looking, for example, for an administrative assistant job, but I also want customer service, I want different keywords to show up in different places because a lot of these recruiters right now and a lot of these companies are actually looking at the keywords and they're using an artificial intelligence software to sift through resumes to save the recruiter time to not have to sift through them one by one. So these are some common mistakes and they're pretty obvious, but make sure spelling is there. If you don't have the Grammarly Chrome extension, I highly recommend putting that on your computer. That will also take care of grammar. You don't want it to be too short. I have looked through thousands of resumes in the last 10 years. Too short, even if you don't have a lot of experience, make sure to put Let them get to know you. We're in a different age now where you don't have to just talk about your professional background. There's also the other side of the coin, which is making sure that it's not too long. A sweet spot is probably minimum 1 page. If you have a plethora of experience, I would definitely say 2 pages is more than appropriate. Another mistake is when you actually are in the resume that it's written like a job description. If you have something on there that says something like responsible for, you're not actually saying the description of your job. You should be talking about what impact you make, which is this next point here about lacking action and impact statements. I'll give you an example. If I helped drive revenue, then that's going to be the first thing that's on there. I drove a 25% increase in revenue. I was identified as a standout employee. So think about what impact you actually make on the business or the company that you work for, and talk about what sets you apart. Because again, on average, somebody's only looking at this from 6 to 7 seconds. Poor formatting, this is also why outsourcing it can be really helpful. I touched on this, but I can't hit this at home enough. Not customizing it or making it relevant for the job you're applying for. One resume is not one size fits all. You want to make sure you're not failing to add those critical keywords. ATS is that tool. It's applicant tracking system. So a good way to figure out if you're sitting there and you're like, I have no idea what keywords to put in there. When you're applying for jobs, before you start the application process, make sure as you're getting your branding together, you're looking at those common keywords and then you're plotting them in there. An example would be like administrative assistant is very similar to somebody might be applying to a secretary and they might use the word administrative over and over again in admin jobs. And then you look at secretary jobs and they use more clerical terms. I would probably apply to both of those jobs using the same resume, but make sure that whenever I'm putting together my background and things that I've done historically using impact and action verbs, that I would make sure both of those keywords are covered for. That would be one resume versus if I was also applying for account manager type jobs. And sometimes account manager is also denoted as customer success manager. I'm looking at those job descriptions and making sure that they're prepared for those applicant tracking systems. Otherwise, they're not even going to see my resume to give me an interview in the first place. Again, a resume is not for the job. A resume is for the interview. So let's say you've gotten your resume all together. You've gotten your LinkedIn, which again, I will go through in a larger module if you decide to do the course after this. I go through all this step by step and show you a clear before and after of 2 different resumes, what it should look like, and how you can update your LinkedIn to make sure you stand apart from other folks. So next I want to talk about where do you actually apply. There's so many choices that are out there, but they're not all equal, unfortunately. Some are better than others. So you're going to hear me say this again and again. I can't say it enough. LinkedIn is my personal favorite because if a company is paying to post a role on LinkedIn, they usually have a better budget, which means they also could have a better budget to pay their employees. The second one that's out there, and it's all over the place, is also Indeed. I would say if I start with LinkedIn, those are usually what I find to be higher quality jobs. This is not always true. It's just been in my experience. I just want to share that anecdote. Indeed is also where I find a lot of folks go that aren't leveraging LinkedIn. I just caution that this isn't the first option, as there are fewer limitations for a company to post here. We want to make sure we're balancing both quality and quantity. Last but not least are Google searches, and this may seem obvious, but when you leverage, I make mistakes too, Boolean searches, which there's a lot out there, you can look for jobs that meet the parameters you're looking for. In the larger course, I show an example, but one would be if I'm putting a customer success manager job, if that's something I'm applying for, I would put that in quotes, and you can use a tool called InText, INTEXT : no space. And what it'll do is look for exactly customer success jobs. And maybe I'll put InText : the word remote, and it will find anything that has the word remote on that particular page where it says exactly customer success. So that way you don't even need to use a job board. It'll expand it all over the internet, but looking for your specific parameters. So I would say this is the order of operations in terms of I would check out LinkedIn first. I usually recommend to folks that they have a job seeker profile because it allows for you to see things like salary and see who's looking at your LinkedIn profile. Because here momentarily, we're going to talk about after you apply, you should actually be doing proactive outreach through LinkedIn. So if you don't have a job seeker profile, it's free for the first 30 days, and then you do pay $30 a month. Hopefully you secure a job well before that. Statistically speaking, to get your dream job, it says out in the ether, it actually takes between 3 to 4 months. Hopefully, again, that's on average. It happens much sooner. But if you're actually looking for what matters most to you, sometimes it does take that long. So if you're trying to budget, how much should I spend on a job search, you do want to invest. You want to invest in LinkedIn. Perhaps you want to invest in Fiverr, and you want to invest in Upwork. You're already investing your time right now by watching this free workshop. So sometimes you have to put your money where your mouth is. Again, a lot of cliches coming out of my mouth right now. So, all right. So we've talked about your branding. You want to get your resume together. You want to get LinkedIn together. We talked about the common mistakes and pitfalls to watch out for. Now we're looking at where you actually apply, and I'm suggesting you prioritize LinkedIn. So regardless of where you apply, whether it's LinkedIn, Indeed, Google searches, maybe you do Monster, Career Builder, or directly on the company's website, no matter what, I recommend you do proactive outreach and you ping the recruiter and the hiring manager directly. So the way that you're going to do that, and this is one concrete example, is by actually following those companies on LinkedIn. You can see the recruiter actually posted the job, and then you can message them. This is actually an example of somebody who messaged me because they were trying to get an in for the company that I work for. But this boosts your chance of separating yourself from the candidate pool and bypass that applicant tracking system. So this is a sample script. Hi, so-and-so, or hi, recruiter. My name is Lacey and I'm blank. If you have a second, I would love the chance to discuss about how my training or my customer service skills or my administrative skills might be a match for XYZ job. I've already gone ahead and applied. Thanks for connecting. I hope you have a great day. So this person actually wrote me and said, hello, Lacey. I hope that you're well and having an amazing day. I'm a recent management information systems grad, and I'm trying to become an APM. I would love to work for blank company, and I believe I can develop quickly, and I will do everything I can to create a positive impact within the cross-functional team. I recently applied for the associate product manager role, and I was wondering if you could take a look at my resume and or possibly point me in the direction of the talent acquisition team. Thanks so much and have a great day. Best, blank. So here's two different examples. I would definitely make sure that you customize this. You can see this person customize it for me, for each person, but I gave you here a general template that you can use because you don't want it to sound robotic. You don't want it to sound canned, but I did reply to this person. I did on Slack, AKA a chat. I did message the recruiter and said, hey, so-and-so reached out to me. I think it's impressive that they went above and beyond to get my attention. So it's not always going to work, but it definitely falls under closed mouths don't get fed. So you can't get something you don't ask for. This can separate you from everybody else who's merely submitting the traditional resume. Okay. So again, crash course, let's say you get that interview. What are some interview questions to prepare? There are questions that you can ask, questions that obviously they're going to ask you. I find that what separates the majority of interviews are the questions that they have for me. Again, going back to it being a mutual fit, the company makes sometimes candidates feel like they have to sell you. It is mutual. They should be selling you just as much as you're selling them. It's an equal relationship, just like any other one. So here are just a sample. I actually have a larger template I share in the broader course. But I think we all know that somebody's going to say, tell me about yourself, tell me about your background. These are questions that you need to prepare your answer for. They're definitely going to ask you why you're interested on moving on, what's ideal in your next role, probably what you want to be doing in the next 3 to 5 years, things like location preferences, timeline, and salary expectations. When it comes to salary, I usually recommend that you do what's called a reversal, which is asking a question to a question. And you say, yeah, for sure. I think asking about salary is great. What is your budget for this role? The person who answers this in theory should be the company. So I try to avoid giving my number. And if they say that is negotiable, what are you looking for? That's when I make sure that I tell them what my range is, and that based on my value, I'm expecting the higher end of that. But I tend to always make sure I find out what the company's offering before I disclose that information. In terms of questions to ask, I think that we could go and spend an entire session just on this. But here is an example of some that I find to be interesting. How successful are you at placing candidates? How many companies do you work with or have a relationship with? What are the skills needed? Why did the last person leave this job? What are the remote options? How long has this role been open? Some of my personal favorite ones are, what are the pain points in this role? What would 30 days look like, 60 and the 90? What would you see going down a year down the role? People obviously love talking about themselves. I like to ask them, why did you come to this company? If you could fix one thing about this company, what would it be? My favorite question, it's not included in this workshop, but I'm going to go ahead and share it with you. And it's a game changer, in my opinion, is at the end of every interview, I always like to ask, what concerns, if any, can I address about me? And what ends up happening is one of two things. Either number one, they say to me, I don't have any concerns. And then that's the last thing they remember. Statistically speaking, people tend to only remember the last 5 to 7 minutes of a conversation. So I think what you say at the end is really important. Or number two, they tell me what their concerns are. If they say, I actually was a little bit concerned you don't have enough experience for this role, then I can say, what could I do to resolve those concerns? Is it taking a certification? Is it showing you that I do have the competency despite the experience requirements? Is it the fact that I'm willing to be coached and I'm willing to learn? Like, what would alleviate those concerns? And then that way you can actually have an honest conversation. From there, you obviously want to send a follow-up email. I will say, people who don't send a follow-up, that usually tells me that they didn't feel that that interview was a memorable experience. So I always look for that when I interview folks. So make sure that you send something here. In that follow-up email, always make sure you send a recap, some customization around what you actually learned. If you learned it has certain responsibilities, or if you talked about a certain pain point that you're going to solve in that role, something that stuck out to you that matters to you. Explain why you. What is different about you than any other candidate, especially if you ask that final question around what concerns can I address? You want to focus here on your experience and how it will benefit the role. And make sure to thank them. Time is the one asset that we can't get back from anybody. So make sure you thank them for their time and share your excitement for the role again. So I know I went through this pretty quickly. I promise between 15 to 20 minutes. We have an entire course that touches on some things that I didn't cover today, which is a deep dive on each topic. I go through concrete examples of before and after on a resume. I talk about more interview questions. Once you get that offer letter, how do you actually negotiate? What are those best practices? What can you do to maximize to make sure that you're essentially getting paid what your value is? I'm happy to answer any questions one off. So if you have any, you can shoot myself and Jordan an email at Ambitiously Intuitive. I believe the email is hello@ambitiouslyintuitive.com, or you can DM us on Instagram. So thanks for attending. Would love to hear your feedback. Enjoy the rest of your day and good luck with everything.